For 7 years, Viridian Capital wasn't just my employer, it was my cathedral. I worshipped at the altar of the algorithm, finding salvation in the clean, cold logic of numbers. My gospel was quantitative analysis, and my magnum opus was a project, codenamed Helios. I was Daniel Quinn, a senior quant, and Helios was going to be my legacy. Helios wasn't just another trading model. It was a predictive analytics engine that used a proprietary blend of machine learning and behavioral economics to forecast market volatility with an unprecedented 92% accuracy in backtesting. It was beautiful, elegant, and, more importantly, it was mine. I'd built it from the ground up, writing the first line of code on a late Tuesday night, fueled by stale coffee and a burning certainty that I was onto something revolutionary. My team, a tight-knit group of 4 brilliant minds, shared my conviction. We were a family, united by a common goal: to give Viridian an unassailable edge. Our immediate superior, a managing director named Frank Gable, was a relic from the old school of firm handshake and gut instinct kind of guy. He didn't understand what I did, but he trusted me. "Daniel," he'd say, his voice a low grumble, "I don't know what a stochastic oscillator is, and I don't care to. Just make the damn thing print money." And it did. My existing models were already responsible for a significant portion of the firm's alpha. Helios was poised to multiply that by an order of magnitude. Life was good. The pay was obscene, the work was fulfilling, and I was respected. The harmony was shattered by the arrival of Marcus Thorne. Marcus was a managing director poached from a rival firm on the street, brought in to modernize our division. He was everything Frank wasn't. Sleek, dressed in razor-sharp Italian suits, with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. He spoke our language Python, our neural networks, but with the predatory accent of a salesman, not the thoughtful cadence of a creator. He took an immediate and unsettling interest in Helios. "Daniel, phenomenal work," he said, gliding into my office one afternoon. He perched on the edge of my desk, invading my space. "I've been reviewing the architecture. It's ambitious." "It's effective," I replied coolly, minimizing my code window. "The final simulation results are due next week. They're promising, I have no doubt." He purred. "But its potential is being constrained. Frank is a dinosaur. He sees a tool. I see. A foundation. This isn't just a model, Daniel. It's a new business line. A managed fund built entirely around the Helios engine." The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. It was the ultimate application of my work, but his possessive tone set my teeth on edge. He started scheduling daily synergy meetings, deep dives into the code, and requested full access to the project's repository. I flagged it to Frank. "Kid, you're being paranoid." Frank sighed, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "He's a hotshot, sure, but he's on our side. The board loves him. Play nice." This could mean a 7-figure bonus for all of us. So I played nice. I walked Marcus through every module, every data pipeline, every failsafe. I explained the ethical guardrails I'd built in to prevent it from being used for market manipulation. He listened intently, his eyes gleaming with an avarice I mistook for intellectual curiosity. That was my first mistake. The betrayal came a week before the official presentation to the board. I logged in on a Monday morning to find my access to the Helios repository revoked. An email from IT, cold and impersonal, cited a security protocol update. My stomach clenched. I tried to call Frank, but it went straight to voicemail. Then, an automated calendar invite popped up. "Urgent meeting, Project Scylla, scheduled in 1 hour." The meeting was with Marcus Thorne and David Chen, the perpetually nervous head of human resources. I walked into the conference room on the 34th floor. The air was thick with a cloying, predatory stillness. Marcus stood by the window, silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline. David Chen sat at the table, refusing to make eye contact, his fingers fiddling with a pen. "Daniel, thank you for coming," Marcus began, turning around. His smile was gone, replaced by a mask of grave disappointment. "We've uncovered a serious issue." He gestured to the large screen on the wall. It displayed lines of code. My code, Helios. But it had been altered. Certain data validation checks were commented out, and the logging parameters were subtly changed. As part of my final review, I ran a diagnostic on the Helios codebase. Marcus said, his voice dripping with faux regret. "I found multiple data integrity flags. It appears that for the past 3 months, the model has been fed. It doctored historical data. Data that conveniently inflates its performance metrics." My blood ran cold. That's impossible. I have checksums on all datasets. Every log is immutable. And yet, Marcus countered, clicking a button. A new screen appeared showing access logs. My user ID, DQUINN, was highlighted next to dozens of entries indicating late-night modifications to the core data files I hadn't touched. The timestamps were from nights I was at home asleep. "This is fabricated," I stammered, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "This is not my work. Someone forged these logs." David Chen finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "We also found anomalous trade signals originating from your test environment, mimicking patterns that could be construed as front-running the firm's positions. It's a serious compliance breach." It was a perfect, elegant, and utterly diabolical frame-up. Marcus hadn't just stolen my work. He'd poisoned it, then pinned the blame on me. He'd used his high-level access to create a digital phantom limb and attach it to my name. Project Helios, Marcus announced with a flourish of finality, is compromised. Its creator, unfortunately, has proven to be untrustworthy. However, I was able to salvage the core architecture. I've spent the last 72 hours rebuilding it from the ground up, implementing enhanced security and oversight. We're calling the new version project Scylla. He had stolen my life's work and renamed it after a mythological monster. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. "You're fired, Daniel," Chen said, pushing a thick envelope across the table. "Your severance is conditional upon signing this comprehensive non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreement. Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal belongings." The devastation was absolute. It wasn't just the job, the money, or the reputation. It was the violation. My cathedral had been desecrated, and I was being cast out as a heretic. I looked at Marcus, who now had the gall to look sympathetic. In that moment, I saw his fatal flaw, arrogance. He didn't just want to win. He needed to humiliate his opponent. To stand over their professional corpse as 2 stone-faced security guards led me to my desk. My colleagues stared, their faces a mixture of confusion and fear. They saw me being perp-walked out of the building, and the message was clear: stay in line. They packed my things in a cardboard box, a framed photo of my late father, a worn copy of The Intelligent Investor, a stupid little cactus. My entire professional life, reduced to a box of shame. Walking out of the revolving doors of the Viridian Tower for the last time, the cold November air hit me like a physical blow. They thought they had broken me. They thought I would sign the papers, take the blood money, and disappear. They had underestimated me. The shock was already hardening into something else, something cold and sharp. Justice through official channels was a fantasy. HR was complicit. This system was designed to protect people like Marcus. No, justice wouldn't be found in a courtroom or an HR file. It would be found in the ones and zeros. It would be delivered from the shadows of the very system they had used to destroy me. Marcus had started a war. He just didn't realize I was the one who had designed the battlefield. The first week was a blur of impotent rage and cheap whiskey. The severance agreement sat on my coffee table, a white flag I refused to wave. My lawyer, a cautious man named Peter, had been blunt. "Daniel, they have you cold," he'd said, peering over his spectacles. The logs. The compliance flags. It's your word against a mountain of their evidence. Fighting this would be financial suicide. Sign the NDA, take the money, and move on. Moving on felt like an amputation. Oh, my name was mud on the street. Recruiters who had hounded me for months suddenly went silent. An interview I had lined up with a hedge fund was abruptly postponed indefinitely. Marcus hadn't just fired me. He'd blacklisted me. He'd salted the earth. This was phase 1 of his plan. Phase 2, I knew, would be him riding in on his white horse, presenting Sela as his own creation and reaping the rewards. The thought of him getting away with it was a physical irritant, a piece of grit I couldn't blink out of my eye. Defeated, I finally booted up my personal laptop. I couldn't fight them in court, but I still had my knowledge. I was the ghost in their machine. I knew every line of code, every network pathway, every sloppy shortcut taken by the overworked IT department. For years, I was the one they called when a server crashed at 3 a.m. or a data feed from the Tokyo Exchange inexplicably broke. I knew where the bodies were buried because I had helped bury some of them not bodies, but legacy systems, redundant servers, then forgotten backdoors that were deemed too much trouble to properly decommission. My first move was reconnaissance. I couldn't hack my way in. Their security was too robust for a frontal assault. But I didn't need to. I needed a sliver of light under the door. My mind drifted to Sarah Jenkins. She was a junior analyst on my team, sharp as a tack and fiercely loyal. She saw me as a mentor. She was also young, idealistic, and probably terrified after watching me get marched out. Contacting her was a risk for both of us. But I was out of options. I created a new encrypted email address and sent her a simple, untraceable message. Hope you're well. Coffee, my treat. I named a small, obscure cafe in the West Village, far from the financial district's prying eyes. She showed up 2 days later, looking haunted. She glanced around nervously before sliding into the booth. "Daniel, I can't be here," she whispered, clutching her latte like a shield. "They're monitoring everything. Emails, chats. Marcus has IT running audits on everyone from our old team. He's paranoid," I said. "Good. That means he's worried." "Worried?" "He's triumphant," she countered, her voice laced with bitterness. "He presented Sela to the board yesterday. They gave him a standing ovation. He's been given his own fund. The Thorne Axiom Fund, built entirely around the algorithm. They're seeding it with $250 million of the firm's capital." The news was a gut punch. He was moving faster than I'd anticipated. "Sarah, I need your help," I said, leaning forward. "I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. I just need information, anonymized data, things that a junior analyst would be expected to pull in the normal course of her duties." She hesitated, her eyes wide with fear. "Daniel, I could lose my job. Or worse. I know the risk," I said softly. "But he faked those logs. He framed me. I would never manipulate data." She looked down at her hands, her loyalty warring with her instinct for self-preservation. I knew I had her when she finally looked up and asked, "What do you need?" "I need the raw server logs from the database that stores the Helios project files. Specifically, the admin-level access logs for the week before I was fired. And I need the initial performance reports from the new Thorne Axiom Fund. Don't email them. Use a secure file drop service. Here's the address." I slid a piece of paper across the table, and Sarah, "Wipe the browser history on your work machine afterward. Use a commercial-grade data eraser." She nodded, memorized the address, and left without another word. The waiting was excruciating. For 3 days, I heard nothing. I refreshed the file drop page 1,000 times, my hope dwindling with each empty result. I started to believe she'd thought better of it, and I couldn't blame her. Then, on the 4th night, 2 files appeared. The first was admin_access_logs.csv. The second was axiom_perf_rpt_wk1.pdf. My heart hammered against my ribs. I dove into the access logs first. They were dense, cryptic, a waterfall of timestamps, IP addresses, and user IDs. I spent hours sifting, cross-referencing, looking for anything out of place. It was all standard procedure, all buttoned dash up ... until I saw it. A single entry, logged at 2:17 a.m. on the Sunday before I was fired. It was a remote connection from an IP address I didn't recognize. The user ID was not me, Thorne. It was a legacy admin account. Cs_integrate. An account created years ago for a third-party software integration and supposedly deactivated. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I ran a trace on the IP address. It resolved to a high-end residential ISP in Greenwich, Connecticut. A quick, perfectly legal search of public property records gave me the address. And the owner, Marcus Thorne, he was arrogant, but not stupid. Hadn't used his own credentials. To plant the fake evidence, he'd used a ghost account, one he probably thought no one remembered. But he'd made a rookie mistake. He did it from his home network. It wasn't a smoking gun he could claim he was performing a late-night security. Check, but it was a start. It was a crack in his perfect facade. The second file was even more interesting. The initial performance report for the Thorne Axiom Fund was glowing. It boasted a 4% return in its first week, an astronomical figure. The Sharpe ratio was off the charts. It was too good to be true. And when something looks too good to be true in my world, it's because it's a lie. My own algorithm, Helios, was designed for steady, long-term growth. It actively avoided the kind of higher risk, higher reward trades that could generate a 4% return in a week. Such a return profile suggested one of two things. Either Marcus had fundamentally rewritten the core logic of the algorithm, or he was juicing the returns somehow. I suspected the latter. Helios now Silo was a black box to him. Helios a salesman, not an architect. He knew what it did, but not how it did it. He wouldn't dare alter the core code for fear of breaking it. So how was he generating these returns? The report itself didn't have the granular data I needed. I needed to see the individual trades. I needed a deeper look inside the machine. That's when I remembered my own Trojan horse about 3 years ago. During a particularly nasty internal audit, I was tasked with building an automated compliance script. Its job was to run quietly in the background, sampling random trades from all the major funds and flagging anything that looked suspicious. Made seconds before a major news announcement, unusually large positions in thinly traded stocks. Anything that smelled of insider trading or manipulation. The script was called Cerberus, and it was my pet project. I'd made it highly sensitive with a multi-tiered alert system. Low-level flags went to the fund manager. Medium-level flags went to the internal compliance department. But I had built in a secret. Third tier, a catastrophic flag, something that indicated systemic. Deliberate fraud would trigger what I called an audit cascade. It would not only lock down the implicated accounts, but also automatically package all relevant data and forward it to a secure, encrypted portal accessible only by the head of the board's audit committee and, crucially, the lead partner at Viridian's external auditing firm. I'd created it as a nuclear option, a doomsday device to protect the firm from a rogue trader who could bring the whole house down. Frank had approved it, but I doubt he ever read the technical specifications. Marcus certainly wouldn't know about it. Cerberus was still there, dormant, running silently on the servers. The scope of my revenge suddenly became crystal clear. I wouldn't leak data to a journalist. I wouldn't try to hack his fund. I would use Marcus's own doctored trades to trip a wire he didn't even know existed. I would make Viridian's own immune system attack the cancer he represented. The problem was I couldn't just trigger it. I was on the outside. I needed a way to make the Thorne Axiom Fund execute a series of trades so specific, so precisely patterned that Cerberus would have no choice but to flag it as a catastrophic threat. I needed to become a ghost puppeteer, pulling the strings of a multi-billion-dollar fund from my cheap apartment in Queens. The challenge was immense. It was risky, complex, and borderline insane. I cracked my knuckles, a slow smile spreading across my face for the first time in weeks. The hunt was on. Asterisk. To make a puppet dance, you must first understand its strings. In this case, the strings were the data feeds that Scylla consumed. The algorithm, my beautiful Helios, wasn't just looking at stock prices. It scraped and analyzed everything: news, wires, social media sentiment, satellite imagery of shipping ports, even the syntax of SEC filings. It found alpha in the digital exhaust of the global economy. I knew its appetites intimately. My plan was audacious. I couldn't feed data directly into Viridian's firewalled systems, but I could poison the well. I could introduce specific, carefully crafted pieces of information into the public domain, knowing that Scylla's web crawlers would find them, interpret them, and prompt the algorithm to recommend a specific pattern of trades. If I could make the fund buy stock A, sell short stock B, and then take a leveraged position in commodity C, all within a narrow time frame, the pattern would match a market manipulation signature I had programmed into Cerberus 2 years prior. It was the digital equivalent of making someone spell out their own confession. The first step was to choose the targets, the financial instruments I would manipulate the fund into trading. They had to be obscure enough not to attract mainstream attention, yet liquid enough for a $250 million fund to trade without causing major ripples. I settled on a biotech firm with a pending drug trial, Biogenics, a regional shipping company in Southeast Asia, Nusantara Logistics, and a portfolio of carbon credit futures. It was a bizarre, disconnected trio, which was exactly the point. The pattern was everything. This phase required a new skill set. I was a quant, not a black hat marketer. I spent 2 weeks in a self-imposed boot camp learning about SEO poisoning, manipulating social media algorithms, and setting up botnets. I used a portion of my dwindling savings to buy server space in non-extradition countries and a dozen burner phones. I was stepping over ethical lines I had never imagined approaching, and a part of me was sickened by it. But then I would picture Marcus's smug face during that final meeting, and the resolve would harden in my gut like concrete. This wasn't just revenge, it was pest control. While I was tooling up, I decided to execute a small preliminary move to test the waters and distract the right people. My target was the spineless HR manager, David Chen. I still had the email chains from a case a year ago, where a female vice president had been pushed out after filing a harassment claim against a top revenue generator. Chen had buried it, citing inconclusive evidence. It was a classic case of protecting the rainmaker. I had been copied on the initial emails before Chen quickly moved the conversation to a private channel, working through a series of encrypted relays. I anonymized the email headers and forwarded the initial chain, proof that Chen was aware of the complaint from day one, to the personal email address of Eleanor Vance, the one woman on Viridian's board of directors, a known advocate for corporate accountability. The effect was immediate. Sarah texted me a single cryptic message a day later. HR floor is a war zone. The ensuing internal investigation into Chen's handling of the harassment case was the perfect smokescreen. It tied up internal legal and compliance resources, pulling their attention away from the trading floor and network security logs. Chen, the obstacle, was now neutralized, busy fighting for his own professional life. One down now for the main event. With my digital infrastructure in place, I began phase 1 of the Cerberus trigger sequence. I used my botnet to create thousands of posts on obscure financial message boards and social media platforms, all hyping a non-existent breakthrough for Biogenics. The posts were carefully worded to include keywords I knew Scylla's sentiment analysis module was weighted to favor. Simultaneously, I used a purchase list of sleeping financial journalists' email accounts to leak a fake internal memo about a major shipping contract for Nusantara Logistics. I watched Viridian's systems through the keyhole. Sarah provided me anonymized, read-only access to a real-time analytics dashboard she was using for a research project. It was a massive risk for her, but her hatred for Marcus now outweighed her fear. From the dashboard, I could see the data flowing into the system. Was working? I could see the sentiment score for biogenics ticking up. I could see the news scraper flagging the leaked memo. Scylla took the bait. The Thorne Axiom Fund began building a position in biogenics and Nusantara Logistics. My heart was a trip hammer. The first two notes of my dissonant chord had been played. The final piece was the carbon credits. This was the most difficult. It required influencing a less public, more professional data source. I discovered that Scylla scraped data from a niche, subscription-only climate research publication. Getting fake information published there was impossible. But I didn't need to publish something new. I needed to reinterpret something old. I spent a night digging through the publication's archives and found it, a dense academic paper from 3 years ago about the potential for volcanic ash from a specific region in Iceland to affect atmospheric carbon levels. The paper was inconclusive and had been largely ignored. This was where the social engineering came in. I created a fake identity, Dr. Alastair Finch, a supposed atmospheric scientist from the University of Oslo. I created a university webpage for him, a LinkedIn profile, a social media presence. Then, as Dr. Finch, I began emailing a handful of influential energy analysts and bloggers, pointing them to the old Icelandic volcano paper. My email was a work of art, full of academic jargon and feigned urgency. I've run some new models based on recent seismic activity, I wrote, and my findings suggest the core thesis of this paper is not only valid but that its effects are imminent. This could cause a dramatic short-term spike in the value of carbon credits. It was complete nonsense. But it was plausible. Academic-sounding nonsense? One blogger took the bait. He wrote a short post on his widely read energy blog titled, "Is an Icelandic volcano about to supercharge the carbon market?" That was all it took. Scylla's crawlers picked up the blog post. The algorithm, seeing the expert analysis and linking it back to the original academic paper in its database, flagged it as a high-probability event. I watched the dashboard, my breath held tight in my chest. The Thorne Axiom Fund began buying carbon credit futures, aggressively, biogenics, Nusantara Logistics. Carbon credits, the pattern was complete. It was a three-part harmony of fraud composed by me and performed by my enemy. Now, all I had to do was wait for Cerberus to act. The script ran its checks every night at midnight. I sat in my darkened apartment, the glow of the monitor illuminating my face, watching the clock tick past 11:59 p.m. This was the moment of truth. Either the trap would spring, or I was just a crazy, unemployed man whispering nonsense into the internet. Then, an alert flashed on the corner of the dashboard Sarah had given me access to. It wasn't a normal system notification. It was a red box with a single word inside it. Cascade. It had worked. The Trojan horse had opened its belly. The audit cascade was initiated. I had just lit a match at the base of Marcus Thorne's ivory tower. The only question now was, would it burn? The word cascade on my screen was not a triumphant explosion. It was the silent, terrifying intake of breath before a scream. The script, my Cerberus, was now unchained. It was packaging every trade, every log file, every scrap of data associated with the Thorne Axiom Fund and pushing it to the people. Marcus feared most the board's audit committee chair and Viridian's external auditors, Price, Latham, and Sterling. My work should have been done. But as I watched the system status through my limited portal, a new, unexpected obstacle emerged. The data transfer, which should have been instantaneous, had stalled. A progress bar was stuck at 17%. A new status flag appeared. Koozy's lock pending purge. My blood went ice cold. Koozy's lock was a quarantine protocol, but pending purge. That was new. I had never designed a purge function in Cerberus. It was anathema to the entire concept of immutable audit trails. Frantically, I dug through the system documentation I had, saved on an old hard drive. Marcus must have commissioned an update. I found it, a new protocol added a month ago. In the event of a major compliance flag on a Tier 1 fund category, only the Thorne Axiom fund occupied the system would quarantine the data for 1 hour. This created a window for a Level 4 administrator, a rank only. Marcus and 2 other top directors held to review the flag. If they deemed it a false positive, they could input a special authorization code to not only cancel the alert, but to purge the underlying flag data. It was an escape hatch, a get-out-of jail-free card designed to erase evidence of any aggressive/evidence of any aggressive, but ultimately profitable strategies that might look bad to auditors. Marcus had built himself a fire escape, and he had 1 hour to use it. My entire plan was about to be deleted. Panic clawed at my throat. I had no way to force the transfer through. I was locked out. I watched the clock. 10 minutes had already passed. Then came the twist I never saw coming. My burner phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but some instinct made me answer Quinn. The voice was a venomous snarl. It was Marcus. "How did you get this number?" I asked, my voice a low, steady calm I did not feel. "Do you think I'm an amateur?" He spat. "While your little script was trying to run, it tripped a secondary alarm that came straight to me. It took my security guys 15 minutes to trace the recessonate. I tore lead minutes to trace the recessonate. Like, look at this. And we all know I've been exploring that. And we all know I've been exploring that path. While your little script was trying to run, it's combedded to crease to a second to trace a secondary alarm. I came to creating dices with tell us and work at digital breadcrumbs back to the pathetic little botnet you set up. And another 5 to find the source order for the server space. Billed to a credit card under a shell corporation that you were stupid enough to link to a recovery email you used. Once, 6 years ago? We have you, Daniel. I am looking at a complete schematic of your sad little revenge plot. My heart sank. He had me. He had found the trail. It's over, he continued, his voice dripping with triumph. In 42 minutes, I will enter my code. The flagged data will be purged, and this entire incident will disappear. But first, the authorities will receive a lovely package detailing your illegal access, network intrusion, and attempted stock manipulation. You're going to prison, Daniel, unless... There it was. The offer. Unless, what? You're going to help me, he said. This little stunt of yours has created a mess. It's flagged trades that, while profitable, are now under a microscope. I can't just erase them. The quarantine log itself creates a record. I need to make the problem go away. Your script. You're going to log in Neil, provide you one-time credentials, and you're going to terminate Cerberus. You will issue a command that declares the initial flag a system error and retroactively validates all the trades. You will fix this for me, and if I do, I'll wipe the evidence of your network intrusion. You walk away, disappear if you don't. You spend the next decade in a federal penitentiary. You have 30 minutes to decide. The line went dead. This was the final confrontation, not in a boardroom, but over a secure line. A battle of wills fought with code as the weapon. He thought he had me cornered. He thought fear of prison would be my ultimate motivator. He was counting on my instinct for self-preservation, but he was still misjudging me. He saw the situation as a binary choice, his victory or my imprisonment. He didn't see the third option. He had made a colossal mistake by giving me exactly what I needed: access. I stared at the clock. 30 minutes. He was right about one thing. His evidence against me was probably solid. But he had revealed his own vulnerability. Couldn't just purge the data without raising suspicion. He needed me to give him cover to make it look like a system glitch. His arrogance was, once again, his undoing. He needed my skills to save himself. My phone buzzed again. A text from Marcus's number. It contained a username, a complex one-time password, and a VPN login. You have 25 minutes. My fingers trembled as I typed in the credentials. A window opened on my screen. It was a raw command line interface to Viridian's core system. I had God-level access. I could see everything. The stalled cascade process. The pending purge timer ticking down. I could do what he asked. I could terminate Cerberus, save myself, and let him win. The temptation was immense, a siren song of self-preservation. My life, my freedom on one side of the scale, justice on the other. But the memory of him standing there, telling me he had salvaged my life's work, tipped the scale. I wasn't going to terminate Cerberus. I was going to give it a helping hand. With my newfound access, I could bypass the quarantine. But simply forcing the data packet to the auditors wasn't enough. Marcus could still claim it was a system error or my own malicious manipulation. I needed to add something more, something irrefutable. My eyes scanned the directory structure. I saw the folder for the Thorne Axiom Fund. Inside, subfolders for performance analytics, risk management, and a folder labeled MDRV_priv. Marcus's private drive was a foolish place to keep sensitive files, but hubris makes men careless. I opened it. Inside were his personal trading statements. And there it was, a separate account held at a different brokerage. That was almost perfectly mirroring the trades of the Thorne Axiom Fund, but making them minutes before the fund did. He wasn't just using Sela to generate returns for Viridian. He was using it as his personal crystal ball to front-run the firm's own trades. It was blatant textbook insider trading. It was the smoking gun. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I had minutes left. I couldn't just add the files to the Cerberus packet. That would be evidence of my own intrusion. Instead, I used my admin access to alter a single line in the Cerberus source code. I changed the definition of relevant data. I expanded it to include all files located in the primary fund manager's private directory. I didn't have to move the files. The script would. Now grab them automatically. With seconds to spare, I executed my final command. It wasn't terminate, it was force_execute_cascade. The progress bar on my screen, stuck at 17%, instantly jumped to 100%. A new status appeared. Transfer complete. Then, a final message. Session terminated. My access was gone. My burner phone rang. Again, it was Marcus. I let it ring and ring and ring. Finally, I picked up. I said nothing. The sound on the other end wasn't a voice. It was a strangled, guttural roar of pure, unadulterated fury. He knew what I had done. He knew I had called his bluff and raised him annihilation. "It's done, Marcus," I said quietly, my voice devoid of triumph, filled only with a profound, weary finality. "Checkmate." I hung up the phone, snapped it in half, and dropped it into my glass of water. The game was over. The execution was complete. Asterisk. The aftermath was not a storm. It was a silent, surgical demolition. I watched it unfold from the cheap seats. An anonymous citizen with a front row view of the inferno I had started. The first tremor hit the financial news. Wires less than 48 hours later. Viridian Capital suspends Star Fund manager amid internal probe. The article was vague, citing compliance irregularities, but the language was dire. Marcus Thorne's name was mentioned alongside words like SEC and federal investigators. Cascade Protocol had worked beyond my wildest dreams. The external auditors at Price, Latham and Sterling, upon receiving a data packet that contained not only a series of impossibly suspicious trades, but also the fund manager's personal brokerage statements, showing clear evidence of front-running, had no choice. They immediately invoked their legal obligation to report potential criminal activity to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Viridian's board, blindsided and terrified, had no room to maneuver. They couldn't bury it, they couldn't spin it, and they couldn't protect Marcus. The evidence wasn't just damning. It was self-contained, digitally signed, and delivered by their own compliance systems. My ghost in the machine had testified against him. Marcus was fired. Not quietly escorted out with a golden parachute, but terminated for cause. A phrase that in the financial world is the equivalent of a branding iron to the forehead. His assets were frozen. The Thorne Axiom Fund was liquidated, its investors compensated, but Viridian's reputation took a multi-billion-dollar hit. Their stock fell 12% in a single day. David Chen, the HR manager, was a minor casualty in the blast radius. The internal investigation I had triggered with the anonymous email about the harassment case concluded he had shown gross negligence. He was quietly let go a week after Marcus. His career over Sarah was safe. My intrusion was traced back to the one-time credentials Marcus himself had given me. There was no way to link her to the initial data she had provided. In the chaos of the restructuring that followed, her competence and familiarity with my old systems were seen as invaluable. She was promoted, given a raise, and put in charge of decommissioning what was left of Scylla. She sent me a one-word email from her personal account. Thank you. My own situation was precarious. Marcus, in his desperation, had undoubtedly told his lawyers and the firm about my hacking. I lived in a state of low-grade paranoia for a month, expecting a knock on the door at any moment. But the knock never came. Viridian's lawyers, I surmised, had made a strategic calculation. Prosecuting me would mean revealing the full extent of their own security failures. It would mean admitting in open court that their star manager had a secret erase the evidence button, and that the only reason he was caught was because his fired framed predecessor outsmarted him. The discovery process would be a nightmare for them. It was easier to let the ghost fade back into the shadows. The final piece of the resolution came in the form of a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. The caller ID said U.S. Government. Daniel Quinn. The voice on the other end was formal, all business. My name is Arthur Jennings, with the Sex Division of Enforcement. We are conducting an investigation into the activities of Marcus Thorne and the Viridian Capital firm. Your name has come up. I held my breath. In what context? Your former colleagues describe you as the principal architect of the trading system. At the heart of this matter, a system Mr. Thorne appears to have misappropriated and misused. Lawyers are building a defense around the idea that the system was flawed and that you are a disgruntled ex-employee who sabotaged it. That's a lie, I said, my voice hard. We believe so, Jennings replied, and I could finally exhale. The code in the audit packet we received is remarkably elegant. The failsafe that triggered the alert, the one Mr. Thorne's team apparently missed. Brilliant. We could use someone with your skills. He wasn't offering me a job, not exactly. He was offering me a consulting contract to help their forensic accountants unravel the full extent of Marcus's fraud, to be their expert witness, to be paid by the United States government to professionally, methodically, and legally bury the man who had tried to ruin me. The poetic justice was so perfect it was almost painful. My professional competence, the very thing Marcus had sought to discredit, was now the ultimate weapon to be used against him. I took the job over the next 6 months. I worked with the feds, dissecting my own creation to show how it had been abused. I found peace in the work, a sense of order restored. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about truth. The anger that had fueled me for so long slowly cooled. leaving behind not a void but a quiet, hard-won clarity. I had crossed lines. I had bent my own ethics and broken laws to achieve my goal. I was no saint, but looking back, I felt a profound sense of moral resolution. I hadn't sought to destroy, only to rebalance the scales. The consequences Marcus faced were a direct result of his own actions, his greed, his hubris, his crime. I was merely the catalyst, the instrument of a justice he had brought upon himself. Last week, Marcus Thorne pled guilty to securities fraud and conspiracy. He's facing a recommended sentence of 8 to 10 years in a federal prison. His name is a curse on Wall Street. I am no longer Daniel Quinn, the disgraced quant. My work with the SEC has led to other offers, fascinating opportunities. In regulatory tech and forensic analysis, I have a new career, a new purpose. My name is cleared, my skills validated. I can finally move forward, sometimes late at night. I think about that single word on the screen, cascade. It wasn't just the start of an audit. It was the start of a flood. A flood to wash away the filth. And I stand today on dry ground watching a new skyline, breathing clean air. Victorious.